Hi guys. Tonight we step into the echoing stone corridors of a medieval castle. Torches flicker along the walls, and you can almost hear the faint whistle of wind slipping through cracks in the heavy wooden doors. It's a setting that seems romantic on a tourist visit, but living here, especially on a winter night, would make you regret it within the first hour. The simple truth is that castles were freezing. Sleeping inside one without central heating, insulated windows, or even a decent mattress by modern standards meant your greatest threat wasn't rival knights. It was the cold. You wouldn't last long without some clever strategies. So before settling in, like the video and subscribe if you truly enjoy the content. And if you're listening now, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where everyone tunes in from. Dim the lights, slow your breathing, and picture yourself getting ready for bed in a medieval fortress. You cross the flagstone floor of a grand chamber, boots scraping over surfaces smoothed by centuries of footsteps. The cold bites your skin despite full clothing. Stone walls don't just resist heat, they devour it. Historians praise castles as defensive wonders, but seldom as comfortable homes. The harsh reality. Those massive walls that repelled battering rams also trapped cold air like a massive icebox. As soon as the sun set, indoor temperatures plunged nearly as fast as outside. Your breath forms visible clouds. The air feels thick, damp, and hostile. Castles kept enemies out, not the chill. Architects planned for moats, drawbridges, and arrow slits insulation never made the blueprints. Notably, many northern European castles sat on windswept hills for strategic reasons. You could spot invaders from afar, and the slopes offered defense. But for sleep, it was a nightmare. Wind lashed every surface, pushing icy drafts through shutter gaps and under doors. It was the worst possible sleeping setup. Fireplaces might seem like saviors, but even a roaring one in the great hall only warmed the immediate area. Step away from the flames, and the cold intensified. By the time you reached your bedchamber, it felt more like a cellar than living quarters. A fascinating detail from late medieval records. Travelers described frost forming inside castle bedrooms, picture waking to icicles on bed curtains or a frozen solid wash basin. Chroniclers saw this as routine, barely worth noting. If your chamber avoided a January rime layer on the walls, you were lucky. Still, people survived. They developed ways to avoid turning into icicles. Survival often followed rituals. As darkness fell, households shrank their nighttime space to trap heat. Fires were banked, beds curtained, clothes layered until movement was secondary, and everyone prayed drafts stayed mild. Imagine entering a medieval bedchamber. The bed, raised high on carved legs, wasn't for show. It escaped the sinking cold air layer. Yet stone still radiated chill upward, hitting you the instant you slipped under covers. Debates persist on whether castles grew cozier over centuries, or if cozy noble myths were later inventions. Tapestries and draperies likely helped somewhat, but cold usually prevailed despite fabric walls. Truth sits in the middle. Improvements occurred, but never true comfort. You recline in this envisioned bed, wooden frame creaking, straw-stuffed mattress rustling. Wind moans against battlements outside. A bedside oil lamp gutters, struggling to stay lit. Your toes ache sharply from cold despite daytime attire. Night sounds filter in, distant guard boots on stone, frost-creaking rafters, a muffled courtyard dog bark, perhaps freezing water dripping nearby. None warms you, It underscores the unforgiving world. Nobles in perfect comfort while peasants froze? Not quite. Peasants' wood and daub homes sometimes trapped hearth heat better than lords' vast stone halls. A small hut's single fire warmed a family decently. In a castle's huge stone box, even 5 fireplaces barely dented the chill. Contemporaries noted the irony. Clerics and visitors wrote of restless castle winters' grand beds, bitter nights. Travelers were advised extra cloaks for survival, not display. Picturing yourself there highlights the ingenuity needed for one night. No simple blanket crawl, and hope. You layered fabrics, piled furs, sealed curtains, sometimes shared with others, human or animal. Each move built microclimates in a relentlessly cold space, shaped by nature and design. This reframes medieval life. Not just warriors, lords, monks, maidens, they were survival experts. Bedtime tested, winter tried, and sleep now an easy luxury was carefully engineered via generational rituals. You'd treasure every warmth flicker, a dog at your feet, hot stones by bedding, frost-free beard as victory. These lingered more than banquets or hunts. Survival stuck. Tonight, in your heated modern bed, spare a thought for those shivering in stone rooms. Long nights, bitter mornings they endured. They slept in uninhabitable places. We'll explore that ingenuity layer by layer, trick by trick, deeper into the medieval night. You enter the great hall, the castle's pulsing core. If bedchambers were stone tombs of drafts, this space pulsed with warmth flickers. Long trestle tables lined the floor, wood polished by countless elbows and tankards. Roasted meat, spilled ale, damp wool, and lingering rafter smoke scented the air. The central hearth roared, a bold orange square defying winter dark. This was the castle's liveliest spot after sunset. People gathered for food and to soak heat before icy retreats. Servants rushed with bread trenchers, ale jugs, steaming pottage platters. Dogs scavenged underfoot, tails wagging for scraps. Laughter, song, knife clatters made it raucous. Briefly, you forgot howling winds and frosting windows. Fact, the Great Hall was the only reliably heated castle space. A massive central or end hearth burned constantly in winter, fed logs or whole trunks. Rank let you sit near, basking in glow. Others shivered at edges, yet heat traveled little. Farther from flames, walls exhaled frost. Heat rose to smoke-stained rafters, floor dwellers cloaked and huddled. Few stayed truly warm, most pretended. Chroniclers note feasts as heating tactics. Nobles timed big gatherings for bitter months. Hundreds body heat plus fire made it almost cozy. Servants sometimes stood closer for extra warmth. Feasting aided survival as much as merriment, but hall glow faded. Feast ended, minstrels packed, guests stumbled to beds. Fire burned low, embers red against cold, shadows lengthening on walls. Evening heat vanished fast. In hours, the hall turned frigid, silent. Picture lingering by fire, reluctant to leave, hands outstretched for final sparks. Cheeks hot, back cold upstairs awaited. Smoke-stung eyes clung to hair, but spiral stare dread won. Debates on advanced hall heating. Some claim later vents flues circulated warmth. Others call it wishful tech ignored comfort. Consensus. Hall warmed only near fire. Acoustics reinforced cavernous power, not coziness. Laughs echoed, footsteps boomed, soundscape vast and cold. Empty, silence oppressed like a sleeping giant's belly. Key image. Hall to bed transition. Leave golden firelight for torchlit narrow passage. Draft knives instantly through slits and doors. breath fogs, bone warmth drains, castle feeds on it, temporary comfort to endless chill-defined nights. Nobles delayed so long they slept their high-backed bench by hearth as bed. Servants' guards collapsed near embers over chambers. Fire risked sparks, smoke, noise, but beat upper ice. Travelers complained more of hall-to-quarters walk than sleep. Brief warmth to cold, shocked bodies. Shivers lasted nights. Castle punished comfort thoughts. Hall glow was psychological. You knew leaving meant merciless night, not just room ritual warmth gathering before cold surrender. Torch out, cup drained, step to shivering bed. Candle flicker showed temporary ease. Roaring fire whispered, sparks died. Servant poked half-heartedly, quit, embers faded. Laughter gone, castle groaned settling. Reluctantly climbed staircase, cloak tight, warmth memory fading per step. Hall glowed dreamlike in mind. Toes numb, fingers sting, night a heat fight. Fleeting glow sanity kept. Gathering, feasting, firelight ritual before cold reclaim. Without hall, unbearable. With it, warmth memory for hours. Climb, keep higher. Hall glow fades. Air shifts instantly. Fire warmth gone. Damp bone cling cold replaces. Walls thick 12 feet stone sometimes from world. Sounds protective. Irony. Arrow siege-stopping walls trapped interior chill. Winter basement fieldstone holds cold memory, radiates despite brief outer warm. Builders knew strength permanence, not comfort walls paradoxical, men fortresses, weather vulnerable. Agreed. Castles warmed narrow hearth radius. Blaze, smoke up. 10 feet away. Icebox. 13th, 14th century accounts, nobles flame front, cloaks hooded, servants foot-stamped circulation, fire tolerable bubble, stone unyielding, travelers' journals, walls sweated, condensation streaked, chambers damp, unpleasant, bedside drips all night, no lullaby. Seasons brought interior moss castle as cave. Scholars wrestled tapestries, hangings difference, grand woven walls pictured but insulated or decorated. Some, drafts cut, drapery warmth pockets. Others, romantic exaggeration richest cloth lost to unglazed cracks. Debate unresolved, shows desperation try anything. Late January bedchamber, small guttering hearth fire. Cliff-like walls, condensation slick, wool-wrapped, shiver. Central proud bed, heavy curtains. Behind, air degrees warmer, cold-carved cocoon. Outside, stone tomb feel. Psychological severe dread cold over hunger or illness. Ladder past, cold, relentless winter nights. Castle escape, impossible home imprisonment marked. Pull coverlet tight, wind hiss through slits. Ears burn, fingers stiffen. Dreams ice fire haunted. Walls not shield off switchless refrigerator. Perspective shift, castles daily unglamorous. Survival machines priced protection, comfort security sacrificed. Winter nights stone arrow safe, never warm. Clearer, castle sleep less peaceful rest, more environment small war. Invisible merciless enemy. Battlefield, chamber, bed, body. Shuffle floor. No carpets, polished wood, humble rushes, crunch boots. Not decoration practical, underfoot cold soften, spills soak, crude insulation. Later Middle Ages docks, households renewed thick layers, noble halls, chambers. Fresh, outdoor grassy, earthy, pleasant scent. Summer inside carry feel. Padding, footsteps muffled, ground-trapped warmth held. Charm short, rushes fouled feast scraps, ale, bones lodged, mice, insects playground, cozy carpet, no winter end filthy, French moralist, midden sleep, double duty fascinating, thin warmth trap, damp stone absorb, constant wall condensation, otherwise slick stone freezing puddle steps. English accounts peculiar, lavender, rosemary, meadowsweet sprinkled rushes, practical, rotting odor disguise, comfort whiff, smoke, damp thick rooms, bed settle, faint lavender, wet wool, wood smoke overwhelming beneath, not warmer night bearable. Architectural historians debate rush's effectiveness. Some, genuine warmth insulating matte feet, icy stone. Others, symbolic order, cleanliness, heat loss walls, ceilings. Most, evidence, patchy question, true warmth tech or messy tradition disguise. Bed picture, servant new rushes scatters, underfoot soft crunch, trample aromas release. Moment, room cleaner, civilized. Morning, damp absorbed, decay cycle starts. Bedroom sensory overload, sheets, wool, fur comfort. Around, old rushes musty, herbs sharp tang, clothes cling, omnipresent smoke. Floor mice rustle crumb search. Details, survival, not luxury, sleep defined. Ingenuity, two simple materials, river, field plants. Long winter endure tools. Carpets, insulation, no chill fraction away whatever. Imagine chamber headrest, floor, nightly cold battle part, enemy stone, fragile shield rushes. Morning. How long these dampness decay betray. Bed edge sit, high piled cloth fingers run. Medieval night chill survival secret one, fabric, wool, linen, fur choice weapons, cocoon-like layered sleeper resemble. Household inventories, textiles, medieval life central. Linen sheets, baseline skin, smooth, cool, less insulating top. Thick woolen blankets, heavy, hound weight compared. Wealth, fur coverlets, fox, sable, bear. Nobles' fortunes invested not show. Winter nights lethal without. Amusing sources buried. Servants joked, masters tucked, immobile layers pinned, turn monumental. 5-6 heavy blankets swaddle, still lie, or covers pull, freeze, risk. Warmth, mobility, cost, most willing trade. Fur special, luxury beyond, practical. Arctic fox, marten or sheepskin, dense warmth. Burgundy noblewoman chronicler, ermine-lined covers, summer travel, refuse, night chills, fear. Absurd us drafts every room slice, cold paranoia rational. Certain households strange custom, too much linen, unhealthy sleep, body heat draw. Balance, wool, fur, above, below, deliberate layer, textile sandwich, linen cool, wool heat, fur trap. Theory. Scientific doubtful folklore, practical comfort mix shows. Scholars, textiles, social meaning puzzle, fur survival or status. Inventories, wealthy enormous fur coverlets collect. Poor, coarse wool, no. Some, power rank symbols primary. Others, drafty castles crucial necessity. Truth between life-saving tools, prestige markers, layers beneath imagine. Wool faint skin, itch modern rougher. Fur dense, almost suffocate cold bay keep. Blankets, straw mattress, sheer weight press. Slight shift, bigger, icy air cocoon invite. Face space, breath warm. Rest, cloth barrier, rely. Room, silent sensations, amplify linen rustle. Wool coarse scratch, animal pelts faint musky odor. Intimate primal. Natural world skins, fibers wrapped, thread hair, reminder, environment armor turn survival depend, medieval sleep essence thought lies, rest, fortress inside fortress build, not battlements, moats, sheets, furs, night, cold barricade whatever textiles muster, without, magnificent chamber crypt inside feel, imagined cocoon lie, nightly ritual understand start, layers gather, self-weigh, morning hold hope. Cold shutters rattle, stones creep, Bed swirl fabric fortress inside, fighting chance stand. Bed furniture more. Hostel room small, livable climate create machine. Medieval four-poster heavy curtains draw back not private space peak. Survival micro-world step. Noble households detailed inventories. Great beds important show. Peasants simple palettes unlike ground rose tall person. Oak walnut carved frames. Pillars like posts, ornate often. Canopy support upward stretch. Canopy decorative only not practical. Sides curtains drape own body heat trap. Icy chamber faint warmth resemble turn. Bedroom inside medieval tent think. Curtains closed. Difference dramatic. Breath body thick bedding heat. Drafty room just freezing hover temperature collect. Extra degrees. Miserable night tolerable mean difference. French Duchess oft-cited record, bed dismantled carts, packed travel, trouble why. Furniture just not life support, unfamiliar castle abbey own canopy, curtains without all-night shiver risk. English sources curious detail, curtains waxed oiled cloth, lined drafts block effective. Heavy curtains pull imagine fabric heavy, beeswax resin faint smell. Cold block just not. Darkness create, sound light muffle. Rarely private rooms privacy illusion give. Modern scholars beds effective discuss. Sleepers genuine warm or later romantic usefulness exaggerate. Archaeological, curtains thick layered worked believe reason. Some, warmth, psychological, physical, as much enclosed, sheltered, cavernous, cold away, hidden feel. Debate continues. Importance believed strongly. Portable beds, noble necessity. One slide picture, bed weight under creak, straw mattress rustle, curtain closed, pull reach. Instantly, air different cold still. Arrow slits drafts assaulted no longer. Breath, less quick fog. Body layered covers relax, actually sleep might sense. Curtain walls water faint drip muffle. Hallway servant distant cough. Outside dog bark even. Inside, fabric fur smell. Faint musky, comforting. Blankets shift rustle only here. Beyond chamber vast inhospitable bed here. Elements against life pocket carved. Foolproof not. Night's curtains condensation collect stiff freeze. Night's hearth smoke inside drift awake choke. Most nobles, four-poster canopy bed nightly cold siege best defense. Medieval people ingenuity realize here not grand inventions, small clever adaptations. Central heating no, private climate bubble build. Insulation no, thick curtains hang self-seal. Night cold negotiation canopy bed truce closest. There lie imagine. Eyelids heavy, curtain beyond world silence fade. Chamber cold still, castle drafty still survival possible space made. Sleep towards drift not night warmer grown. Fabric wood through outwit managed just enough. Blankets, curtains beneath all. Night rest foundation mattress still. Underlie. Night some comfort pass or aching shower frozen, cranky wake determine. Middle Ages bedding many forms, feather bed straw tick stand out. Feather bed luxury, goose duck feathers stuffed sack sink. Imagine soft, pliable, body warmth cradle. Noble estates inventories, multiple feather beds list, lord travel household move, or store careful. Well-stuffed bed frame foot nearly above sit thick unforgiving chamber bouncy cushion otherwise. Families, prized, guarded, treasured possessions down pass. Comfortable simply not status symbols. Twist here. Feather bed suffocating hot become body heat trap. Winter even sweat-drenched wake sleepers until 15th century letter amusing complaint survives. Guest host, bed goose pot like swallow moan. too many feathers, too deep sink, gently cushioned sleep instead, night surface, back crawl struggle spend. Most people reality, straw tick large sack, straw hay reeds filled, crude mattress form until stuffed. Peasants, soldiers, castles lesser chambers used, cheap refill easy, icy floor off moderately effective lift, straw curses own came, quick flatten, cloth through poke, fleas often harbor, household's bed regular beat literally straw sack whack shake fluff vermin drive. Morning, body straw scratches itch might night survived least. Contemporary sources strange detail note. Some straw herbs mixed not smell sweeten only, pests ward. Lavender, mint, pennyroyal, tossed in damp hay, sour odor mask faint fragrance leave. Straw-stuffed mattress ever slept, smell quite leaves never know. Earthy, musty linger, clothes, hair seep, researchers feather beds common how debate still. Some, very top society rare luxuries reserved argue. Others, middling households, least one own, records point, assumed widespread more suggest. Disagreement patchy evidence down what reveals. Sleeping surfaces deep matter meticulously recorded enough. Drafty chamber straw tick down lie imagine. Beneath sack rustle, back against uneven lumps press. Shift each. Grassy puff scent herbs, faint sharpness mixed release. Floor rushes within mice, tiny scurry here. Visit pay wonder. Above blankets heavy press straw below age. Comfort guaranteed never remind. Noble room feather bed alternative picture. Down embraced body. Softness deep sink. Heavenly feel warmth stifling grow until. Feathers shift. Little too tight cradle you roll hollow into. Blankets push. Fresh air search curtains everything trap. Anyway, back fall asleep discomfort this straw 1,000 times better still know. Straw feathers, choice medieval social ladder mirror. Feathers lie, privileged belong. Straw lie, necessity accept. Both same challenge responses, cold unforgiving stone chambers body alive keep. Imagine bed tonight off drift is so realize medieval sleepers passive never. Mattress every humble grand effort adaptation, cold over small victory represent, bed into collapse just not. Strategic decision make feathers sink or straw endure, dawn until survive hope all. Carefully built bed, most even curtains, feather mattresses, blankets heaps, own on coldest night survival guarantee always couldn't. Difference made what? Furniture not. Company. Stone chamber alone sleep, body heat walls into simply bleed. Beside others, sleep. Warmth multiplied. Dark pressed together radiators like act bodies. Noble families understood, openly admitted rarely though. Servants adjoining rooms sleep often or master bed foot even pallets on. Arrangement service security only about not. Practical also. Space in people more. Temperatures higher meant even precious few degrees only if. Warmth first at notice, not might. Midnight come, but shutters inside frost gather when. Extra body every counted. Medieval monasteries accounts, monks long rows sleep, cots straw beds side by side drafty dormitories in. Reasoning communal discipline solely not, survival also. Crowded quarters those, body heat insulation layer create thin however, barracks same principle. Soldiers rows huddled, cloaks tight, pull together chill resist better alone trust. 14th century English manner, curious anecdote. Nobleman will one favorite squire, Lord Chamber fire, near night place grant specifically order. Scholars. Favor mark only not interpret but companionship warmth, valuable as inheritance admission. Bed chamber share invite, intimacy merely not, warmth privilege, practice another layer of coarse animals, dogs particular literal heaters become. Hinadanth three-dog night phrase, later folklore much from come may but reality-rooted idea. Medieval people hounds bed in to allow often not companionship only, animals heat radiate because. Large mastiffs couple feet at curl, numb toes, comfort between, difference mean might. Travelers, some inns guests record even dogs, goats, even sheep beside together packed sleep. Intense smell, warmth, fragrance trump. Scholarly debate bed sharing nobles among acceptable socially, however continues. Some, routine argue lords trusted companions with, ladies maids with, travelers strangers with, others, elite among intimacy, such limited or carefully controlled insist servants, bed itself inside, rather pallets nearby relegate. Clear what, however lower classes in, bed sharing normal. Families together, pile parents, children, often grandparents, single blankets, heap under limbs tangle form. Survival stake at little meant privacy. Such bed and lie now imagine not alone, others with shoulder to shoulder pressed. First minutes awkward feel elbows poke, someone coughs, blanket slips. Soon warmth builds, shared body heat cocoon, feet against dog weight feel. Companions soft breathing hear, muscles slowly unclench. Castle wind howl may cluster this inside comfort almost believe. Drawbacks with came, of course. Fleas, lice easy spread. Dark in whispers secrets carry. Irritations those weighed but sleepless night shiver risk against simple choice. Warmth, dignity over choose. Companionship, solitude over. Modern minds to servants, siblings, animals with bed share. Thought uncomfortable feel may. Medieval sleeper for but survival strategy down past common sense accepted. Stone, frost world in, extra body every blessing. Own blanket tighter pull as tonight, so think those long ago sleepers same cold face but fewer defenses had who. Solution simple, had warmth what share. Night merciful be hope. Candle out blow imagine, covers under settle. Tonight alive keep that curtains bed, or blankets just not. Wearing your what also. Modern custom unlike pajamas into slip or all at nothing even. Medieval people day by as bundled nearly sleep to when often. Insulation system part of become itself clothing. Household accounts, surviving garments. Bedtime staple attire, nightshirt, show long loose linen garment, oversized tunic resemble. Warm sound, not might linen you to, but practical choice. Wool to compared launder easy, skin against smooth relatively, breathable. That over extra wool tunic even or cloak throw might, cold severity depending on. Medieval minds to layers more better. One detail outstands nightcap or coif. Small cloth caps, chin under tied or head over snugly pulled simply. Skull covering on emphasis, such why. Body heat most through head escape believed widely sensible quite because. Coif without sleeper medieval. Armor without night-like, exposed dangerously. Illuminated manuscripts, bed into tucked figures, show heads neatly wrapped dreams for, than travel for ready more like look. Nightshirt length and vary could itself. Poor families had what wore, sleeping for repurposed undertunic often. Wealthier nobles, fine thread with embroidered nightwear commission or fur and edged. Ladies some, ribbons with trailed hoods, sleeping even reality and impractical those suspects one thou. Style whatever principle clear. Could you everything cover? 15th century medical text, curious note, sleepers feet linen or wool in bind night air against recommends. Fashion mere not this. Extremities first froze early recognition. Toes, ankles, even hands, cloth strips and wrap people bed before. Makeshift socks, mittens create. Almost feel can you hands swaddled, feet cocooned, skin inch every relentless cold from shielded. Debate about what but, specialized sleep clothing widely how over-divided remain scholars. Daytime garments reusing simply opposed as existed clothing sleep specialized. Some, peasants for things such, no was nightwear argue day during war whatever and simply collapsed people. Others, night linens, specifically mention inventories and wills, to point middle upper classes for least normal, was attire, sleep distinct suggesting. Truth, hold both rank, region, depending. Nighted up covering all agree, but negotiable none. Weigh this in bed for preparing yourself picture now. Heavier outer layers off strip, long linen shirt into slip, ears over cap snug tug, necked nips air blankets up pull until. Fabric fiber, every defense layer tiny adds together cocoon form. Drafty bee mite bed, freezing room, but cloth of fortress become has body your least at. Vivid details sensory or the linen first, it's scratchy faintly and cool. Skin your heats is warming. Sheep and lanolin of faintly smells wool earthy reassuring, but head around gently presses cap sound muting enclosed feel making you. Parcel like swaddled position into wriggle, come sleep for weight. Night clothes, for reason another was warmth beyond modesty. Bed sharing common where world in, naked or half-dressed unacceptable. Married couples even bed in shirts long and caps wearing manuscripts and depicted often. Night surviving about just not. Propriety about. Lord whether so and lady, servant, soldier, or nightshirt, and coif, practical as much as function social served. Night such of rhythm the of think down dressing, not up dressing ritual, cloth more layering, knots tying, light extinguishing before wrinkles smoothing and, sense modern are in, relaxation with associated nightwear. Elements the against armor was, sleeper medieval for. Blanket own your tug as so tonight dark the he against tightly wrapped heads, wool and linen and bundled dreamers than travelers like more bed into climbed who figures ago long those of think. Effortless not was sleep there. Stone cold siege endless the against layer by layer, stitch by stitch engineered. Covers underslip you before moment the picture servant forward steps, long-handled pan carrying, firelight in faintly glowing surface brassets. Inside, coals hot hiss and crackle, metal heated and ash of smell the with chamber the filling. Ingenious as simple as tool A. Pan warming medieval the object curious this ice of blocks like felt that sheets into crawl wanted who because. This like went ritual. The bedclothes between forth and back pan the slid servant, perforations tiny through heat radiating inside coals the. Smoke with puffed above sheets the, wood burning of tang faint the with filled air the. Minutes few of four, inviting almost something into slab, frozen from transformed bed, the. Step this without own your before hour and for shivering lie might chill the softened finally heat body. Noble households from inventories surviving nightly life of tools. Ordinary pots chamber and candlesticks alongside pans warming list. Expected were they. Rare not. Middle Ages late the buy. Winter an essential as them treated Europe across homes wealthy. One without chamber. Luxury merit not to status enough low someone by occupied or neglected either. Hazards carried pans these too, but letters contemporary, too long place one in pan, left servants when a blaze set even, or black scorched sheets of complain. Linen your wear hole smoking a discover to only bed into sliding imagine. Stories are there, tragic half, comical half. Night middle thee in bed from springing men, noble of rushes, dry of full chamber, wooden roof to hay and blankets. The cot had pan warming a from sparks because matter small no were accident such. Italy from account odd, particularly one bed the warming before coals, the on to directly herbs, aromatic sprinkling describes. Disease off ward and air the purify to thought was behind left smoke thee. Now smell almost can you, finally you beneath climbed as fabric the to clinging embers of tang sharp the with rosemary and lavender mingling. Superstition with practicality, combined belief, the illnesses invisible and cold, both against battle nightly Life domestic medieval and specialists widespread, truly pans warming how discuss still. High status mainly to confined where they argue some foe common for risky and expensive two households. Middling among common were cloth in wrapped embers with filled pots, clay as such version simpler that counter others' families. Survived rarely items humble such, because elusive is truth thee. Society across existed bed the preheating of method some that however clear, what's varied form thee, if even, chamber you're in process, the watching yourself imagine now, sheets thee across, steadily pan the draws, servant, evaporates dampness as faintly rising steam, withdrawn pan the wen room, the of cold bitter the after startling almost, warm unexpectedly as covers the under air, the escapes it before heat that trapped to quickly inside slide you. Winter of heart, the in summer of pocket a stolen you've as if blissful feels cocooned the minutes few for, last doesn't it? But walls castle the chill, relentless the more once replaced, rapidly fades warmth thee. Night all comfortable keeping about never was tricked thee. Bearable sleep of moments first the making about was it, shivering the overcame exhaustion once, relaxed body your once, rest the dew heat own your let and slumber into drift to likely more were you. Start a by to enough but entirely cold, the solve to enough never compromise of symbol A was pan warming the way a in rest the I'll endure, and comfort of minutes few a me give night the with bargain a striking like was it. Sheets your to clinging embers of scent faint the with off drifting there, lying yourself imagine as you reel. Really sleep medieval ritualized how just realize you. Gestures and garments, tools of choreography, a involved evening every show for luxury, and not was pan warming the kit survivally apart was it, rest than rather misery and begun have would nights many it without, and closer blankets heavy the tugging bed, imagined you're in stir you legs you're against press weight as suddenly when, knees you're of crook the into curls shape solid warm, Night the four down settles, and contentedly sighs, person another not its. Lucky were you if three even maybe, or two perhaps, or dog A. Unusual from far was bed the share animals letting of practice, the companions hunting or property of guardians, just not especially dogs. Heaters were they. Warmth radiated coats thick there, dark the of hours, long the through masters their near stay with loyalty there, and feet your add up snuggled hounds, few a with bearable, more significantly become could cave icen like, felt that chamber castle a. Women noble to gifted dogs lap small mentioned occasionally, ages middle later the from records household and will's bed in warmth for but, companionship for only not. Now them call might we as, dogs comfort these perfumed and brushed creatures pampered were. Night's winter of chill the away chase to roll important most their butt, bed thee of bottom the across logs furry like outstretched meanwhile breeds larger. frostbite from toes protecting, Scandinavia from reference curious even A is there. Rooms guessed unheated the and then rather animals with stalls and sleep to request it often winter and travelers, how describing. Bulkets of heat shear the by-warmed body your butt, hay of smell the with heavy air the you beside cow, a of breathing steady the off-drifting imagine. Effective, but glamorous not. Intimacy special a carried, however, dogs. Heart masters his from frost, the away keeps dog faithful acclaims French in proverb medieval, a. Poetic and literal both its body, the sustained warmth animals thee. Castles draughty lonely, in spirit the soothed presence its while. Practice this universal how undivided remain scholars. Formal in upon frowned was beds, noble in animals, allowing that maintain some custom open, then rather indulgence private to relegated households. Widespread was it suggests evidence the argue others, etiquette than more mattered survival, where castles frontier or rural in especially. Truth practical or exaggeration romantic is doglappa with sleeping lady of image, the weather around circles debate thee. Vividly seen the picture now, blankets wool, and nightshirt linen, your enswaddled lie. You tight-drawn bed, the of curtains, the battlements, the along shrieks wind the outside. Cold with ache toes you're them against pressed hound a of warmth the feel suddenly until solid body its coarse fur its hesitation without welcome you outdoors thee and hunt thee of scent that carries it though and side you're at curls dog another soon cloth in just not heat living and cocooned are you transformed as world thee bed thee inside but icy still be may chamber thee. Inconveniences with came this, of course, covers the under-hidden bones on gnawed sometimes, and dirt and dragged hair-shed dogs, companions human there to spreading, them with traveled insects. Worth it was trade off the yet sleep without nida than blanket dirty a better, frostbite than fleas better. Unforgettable is mixed sensory the clothes you're to clinging smoke faint, the fur dog of smell earthy, the blankets of press heavy, the all it underneath and breathing creature. Another of rhythm, steady, the reverence on bordering affection with animals, thereof spoke people wonder. No, its survival share to was warmth, share too. Habits, sleeping medieval of essence the captures, later much coined phrase a thou, night dog 3 the of image thee. Cold manageable meant dog 1, chill serious meant 2, bed thee into heat of source possible every stacked nobles, even that bitter, so was night the meant 3. Tonight bed own you're in there, lie as so darkness by surrounded, drafts by assaulted, stone by isolated castles and people for felt, have musted extraordinary how of think side there by curled animal, and of loyalty simple the from comfort and strength draw too. Nights winter countless through a live other each kept dog and human, warmth of exchange, small that in. Moment awe for back curtains the pull imagination, you're in chamber, noble the outside step and unfold sleep of world. Another quarter servants shadowed thee in courtyard the across. Stark was slumber noble and peasant, between contrast the goal same, there was nights bitter through survival yet. And surprise might answer the then warmer truly slept who? Comfort, mean always not did grandeur but canopies thick and pans warming, coverlets fur, beds feather grandeur had nobles. Rest for as much as display for built, cavernous were chambers bed there. Heat too impossible them made space that all, and sponge alike warmth swallowed stone the fireplaces roaring with even. Eyes his before mist into froze, that air breathed still yet. Fur and down of heaps on lie might lord a sow. Interior entire the warmed hearth single of that and of small daub and timber of houses humbler and lived meanwhile peasants. Insulation is acted straw with thick roof thatched room the event one had stabled animals often with, together, huddled families. Heap draughty and then tolerable more far air, the kept heat combined thee. And tower lords thee, then better far warmth held they. Mean were huts, though that astonishment mild with village English, century 14th to visitor, wrote. Comfort than more determined status yet, and washing with softened linen, furs imported, quality high of wool materials finer to access had nobles. Thinned they until patched blankets, and wool coarse with dew made peasants, smokehouses in roughly cured sheepskins, or smoke hearth and lanolin of strongly smelled bedding, they're well insulated it though, and luxurious felt or looked never it. Records manorial from note, curious one fire, the near benches on directly slept sometimes peasants, laps there, in curled children there. Warmth guaranteed hearth, the closeness the butt, smoke and sparks risked they. Heat immediate that lacked often, hall great the from separated, chamber bed nobles the contrast in. Expect you'd weigh the in always not, distributed unevenly, thus was comfort. Warmth of hierarchy real the overpuzzle still today researchers. Sleep better you buy automatically wealth did? Easily more nights winter the endure. Cottages snug but cramped therein. Peasants or weighs both points evidence. Superior them kept textiles of volume sheer nobles that argue scholars some. Match not could grandeur aristocracies that warmth practical offered classes lower the of spaces, communal smaller the insist others. Divisions social mirrored itself sleep much, how highlighting unresolved remains discussion thee. Side by side scenes too the now imagine, castle the inlayers heavy beneath shifts nobleman shudders the against wind of gust every with echoing room. Vast the white curling breath his, hearth the before mattress straw onto squeezes family peasant village the inn down, nearby stall the from drifting animals of smell, the kittens like nestled children. Formal stiffly and ornate is bed one, earthy and crowded other thee. Warmer wakes body, which but cases all fit answer one no perhaps and lingers question thee. Truth one shared peasant and noble, both still adapted they. Possible rest until habits and homes reshaping, hardship with live to learning about not was night medieval, the in survival. Simplicity and closeness on relied have May peasants. Luxury flaunted have May nobles, morning toward way they're dreaming and shivering. Stars winter same the underslept all but, tonight bed warm own you're in drift as you. Sleep medieval of quality the always not, but trappings the determined status irony, the sense can you. Hall grandest the than warmth genuine, more held hut, humblest the sometimes, chamber noble and established bed a once that think might you. Posts carved with heavy objects massive were beds these all after, moved never it. Practice in but, season the two according shifted slept they were often families, sanctuaries timeless fixed, not were bedrooms. Wind and fire, sunlight to relationship therefore chosen spaces flexible were they. Summer in it fled, and winter and sun the chased you words other in. Plainly habit this reveal estates noble from documents. Chambers summer and winter had castles some scenery of change a wanted people because not, demanded warmth of physics the because but. Day the each hours precious few for windows, the through struck sun weak the wear, exposure southern with rooms into moved families months cold in. Heat more little a stored their walls thee, hostile less little a felt air thee. brutal so quite not was up waking, and rooms north facing into retreated and spaces sunlit, those abandoned they, summer come. Household devour Edward of accounts. The inexample documented will a is their rest to chose king the wherever nests temporary creating, another to chamber one from tapestries and linens, beds feather carried servants. Survive to essential was mobility, palaces stone in living those for but, ordeal logistical a was it. Year one, frost the to chamber his lost, he that letter issue e and complained courtier Burgundian, a from survives note curious a. Their sleep to refused he that cold and damp so grew, said he, walls thee. Sun rising the facing room narrower instead choosing. Us reminds phrasing his adversary and was itself building the castles in that. Seasons the with retaken, and surrendered cold by conquered were rooms. Estates grandest the of luxury, a. Was this weather or chambers seasonal? Multiple offered truly castle every, whether debate still historians, architectural and archaeologists. Where they were cold, the endured a forcing, sleeping for rooms suitable, few only had castles of majority, that argue some. Living seasonal for design, intentional shows records surviving, and fireplaces, placements window of evidence that insist others. Persuasive is image the but, unresolved remains argument thee. Turned whether thee as nests shifting birds like walls own its within migrating family noble, aturned has earth the year each as, again cycle that began you, and permitted damp thee and wind thee, sun the where slept you not, wanted you where sleep not did you. Adjustment constant and planning, movement demanded cold against fight the static not, dynamic was sleep medieval of truth another see you sowin, seasons the with rhythm and adapted life and rotated chambers moved were beds. Design interior then rather elements the, by dictated, mobile was sleep cottages and castles both in. Bedrooms fixed of notion, modern hour of little had life medieval that you reminds practice this. Space sacred permanent and not was bedroom a. Stone of fortress larger, the within camp temporary was it. Walls its within nomads like shifting inhabitants its, temperature and light by reshaped, alive was castle thee. Chamber medieval a of window narrow the by moment a for stand. Skin your across, slip draft the feel, and frame sealed in panes glass there with homes today's unlike. Wall the in holes vulnerable, were windows castle. Wind the to invitations, but arrows against defenses were they. Notion the even without, glazing double without, glass without. Birds and rain then more little out, kept that cloth stretched, or shutters simply were openings these, insulation of. Households medieval of surveys written, many and rare, so is glass reveal. Oratory private lords the or, chapels for reserved was it castles. Inside from barred be could that planks thick, shutters wooden had chambers ordinary. Air and light for open stood they summer in. Wind the inn creaking tight, shut they winter in but. Chill the against shield, no was a lone wood yet. Cracks through crept cold, damp grew room thee. Opening the across cloth stretch to a solution practical, a rain to resistant and translucent, it make to wax or oil in soaked linen sometimes. Parchment through sunlight like hazy and soft, enter to glow amber dim, allowed this day by. Wind the of shriek the dulled it, night by but, rattled frame the, flapped fabric thee, it with live to learned sleepers, and porous was fortress there, that reminder constant thee. Account household French century. 13th from comes reference intriguing one frames wooden into set and translucent scraped horn animal of slices thin. Cloth to alternative sturdier, but crude provided these. Warped and quickly yellowed they though, better weather resisted, and light pale admitted they. Panes such throughout looking imagine glass, fogged through seen if as blurred world thee. Brutal less fraction adjust, chamber your inside yet, or really windows cloth oiled or horn. These common how debate historians architectural and archaeologists. Shutters only relied households most, while castles wealthiest the of luxuries where they argue some. Europe northern and widespread surprisingly were ages middle, later the by that suggest others. Us reminds debate of existence vary the but, fragmentary as evidence, the cold, the in themselves, between barriers improvised to desperate were people how. Frame the across tacked cloth, the drawn is shutter thee. Window such a bow at yourself picture now. Sill thee along forms frost of line sharpest still, and it near lean you as clouds breath your. Moon the reflect snow thee outside. Gappa for searching wind of moan thee, and wood of rattle, faint the hear you inside but, you to way its find will draft the know you, curtains bed your hang carefully how matter know. Haunting is soundscape the corridor distant a and banging shutters, sails like faintly snapping fabric, cracks into rags stuff they as muttering servants. Frames the around gaps into clay or moss, pressed even household some insulation makeshift as. Temporary and unsightly, messy was it. None than better measure any, freezing below dipped night the when but. Battle same the faced cottages and peasants, slits narrow off close to shutters just, all at windows, no had often houses there. Light inlet to thin stretched animal from membranes bladder use some. Eerie was effect the veil, a behind were outside world the if as, shadows distorted with but, faintly glowed rooms, ice brittle into sheets translucent turning, frost with hardened coverings these even though, night at. Bitter was irony the nobles for, winds cutting to exposed also but defense and status, them gave towers high there. Felt colder the slept they higher that remarked sometimes guests. Lord A of wealth the envy might hut low as in peasant a window chamber tower through whistling draught the not but. Too beauty it was there yet. Night moonlit on bed in lying imagine floor the across washlight silver led to enough just cracked shutters thee. Yes, in seeped cold, the shadows of poetry did so, but outside, snow of glow faint thee, curtained thee against branches of silhouette thee. Wonder and discomfort of balance A was sleep medieval. Peace, fragile, of moments, also offered night's harshest the wear. Tonight, curtains own your draw you when so windows ancient those picture. In way it's found, always night thee, walls the thick how matter know that reminders than barriers less were they. Draft after draft, with live to learning about was entirely cold, the conquering about never was sleep. Broke morning until blaze the insalvation expecting, chamber bed castle a of hearth the approaching yourself picture you, room stone awe and fire assurely. Comforting less far is reality the but, them into fed be could trees entire, that enough wide yawning chimneys there, enormous were fireplaces medieval. Space the heating actually at poor were they, spectacle their all for yet. Physics simple was reason, the smoke the with upward directly escaped heat more thee, chimney the wider. Embers glowing into collapsed logs, danced sparks, roared flames. Air the in-misted still breathier, away paces few a more than step yet and, circle immediate its in heat of oasis bright a created fire. The cold bitterly remained chamber castle that beyond but demanded this wood much how emphasize records household. Timber of loads wagon entire consume might castle large, A in weak winter single A. Fuel for but, construction for just not concern, constant A became management forest. War any than faster woods the emptied, had warm hall great is keeping that letters his in bitterly complained France in Lord one. Imagined one comfort that provided rarely yet, resources devoured fires. Two accounts amusing are there, manna warm to weak too, but oxen roast to enough big were fireplaces noble that joked sometimes guests. True rings exaggeration thee. Majesty of sense A and light, spectacle provided hearths these. Walls stone of chill unrelenting the against relief real little but. Room the into heat reflecting, flames the behind firebacks iron placing with experimented household some. Longer little a warmth stored a tiles with hearths lined others, fully conquered a large to problem A against tinkering solutions partial were measures these. But it in front right sat you if warm feet your keep might fire blazing A. Outdoors been have as well, might room the across bed your. And icy remained back your butt. Were truly fireplaces castle effective how dispute still scholars. Retention heat of system layered a creating, furniture heavy and hangings with combined when warmth meaningful provided they argue some. Comfort then ritual and status about more, symbolic almost where they contend others, chimney the up vanished energy the of most sense. Climate and design, resources on depending castle to castle from varied likely truth the. Room such I in yourself imagine now, hearthstones the onto sparks spitting loudly, crackles fire thee. Air the entang faint a leaving, upward curls smoke. Warmth with prickling flushed feels face your. Cold remains shoulders your butt. Sleeves your singed nearly until hands out holding. Closer shuffle you. Stepped every with drops temperature the fine to only chamber the across bed you're to retreat reluctantly then. Outside sitting been have as well may you. Blankets the underslip you time the by. Hearth smaller therefore more benefited often contrast by peasants. Was it those smoky interior hole the heated cottage modest A and fire central single A? Warmth tolerable maintained together bodies in flames that meant space cramped thee. Frozen half left chambers but resources through burned contrast by. Fireplaces noble grand thee. Comfort and to translate to failed again, once grandeur. Mattered fire the of ritual the yet and, heat about just not was it. Darkness the against back pushed something least at that reassurance the about, light about, gathering about. It beside chairs and dozed, it by stories shared, fire the by prayed people. Room the across carry didn't warmth the when even. Cold cavernous the in life of beacon a safety psychological offered glow thee. Frost from you saving fireplace roaring a of think not. Night medieval imagine you when so. Air icy of sea A and heat of island. Fragile A of instead think near stayed you long. As lasted that comfort in bed into climbed you moment that disappeared that comfort. Tool practical. As much as performance it was hearth thee. Give could it little what for grateful be to learn sleeper medieval dean. Safe feels it moment fleeting afore, fireplace glowing that to closer lean you. Itself asserts life medieval of reality another then but smoke. Machines efficient clean, not were fireplaces. Surface every unsettled and eyes the stung that haze all with chambers filled. And soot left, fumes belched they, ash and coated lungs with wake, and walls blackened except to, nightly smoke breathed to was fire by warm stay too. It about bitterly complained time the of chroniclers. Prayed he, then more coughed he, that Hartha from soot with coated so grew sell his, that noted England northern and monk one. Immune not were nobles even. Exposure, smoke constant by discolored linens and gowns, ruined lamenting women mention records court. Winter singula within grey turn might tapestry cleaned newly, worse matters made architecture thee. Flues modern of control draft thee without shafts. Crude, wide were chimneys, politely rise always not did smoke. Chamber that a clung and eddied drifted, it, room thee into back poured it, direction wrong the blue wind the if. Throat your burn smoke while asleep fall to trying imagine. Notes travelers from observation, curious interiors brighten to only not. Clay or lime with walls there smeared deliberately people some that is. Restored be could cleanliness of illusion the least it but, left truly never residue black thee. Little for while. Permanent was however, smell the bedding to clung that clothes and wool burned and stone damp, wood charred of mixture Were rooms smoky these tolerable how just over divided remain scholars. It to hardened expectations in bodies, they're adapted simply people medieval that argue some. Toll health the recognized contemporaries, even that insist others, lungs blackened and air choked about treatises medical in complaints repeated to pointing. True are both perhaps, choice no had they because endured people. It about grumbling stopped, never they, but night such a after bed in lying yourself imagine now. Smoke of smells hair your, ash of tang acrid the hold blankets your, tongue your on bitterness taste you, cough you when, and inside it of some trap curtains bed thee. Fire thee of ghost, that carries cocoon tiny or even so. Before than warmer ben have made chamber your, air fresh of cost thee it came it, but better no fared peasants, altogether chimneys lack off in cottages there. Thatch the through, leaking slowly, rafters the filled in rows, simply hearth central the from smoke. Adulthood before blackened lungs their smoke with hazed perpetually houses in up grew children. Normal as it saw people yet. Away insects keeping, roof timber the preserve, helped smoke the believed even some. Breath every in together blended superstition and survival. Overwhelming was experience sensory. The particles, soot from prickled skin, your constantly watered eyes, your dust black gathered floor, the onrushes the and. Futile felt effort the though, endlessly swept servants. Same the was winter every other the worsening without one win couldn't you that knowledge the and cold against battle smoke against battle Discomfort the despite yet, negotiable non was fire. It without winter castle a survive could one know. Peace there made people so. Proudly tapestries smoky hung they. Fits coughing endured they. Mourning each faces there from soot scrubbed they. Sacrifice demanded warmth. Air clean was sacrificed thee and thought without comfortably breathing tonight. Bed modern you're in lie you is so. Is luxury such extraordinary how consider. Morning smoky another meant night warm every. Sleepers medieval for. Wood burning of scent the inn steeped were dreams there. Soot of shadow the enlived lives there. On stretched night thee and dimmed fire the when. Chamber medieval eye and left glow only the from came candle often. Ambiance of touch decoration is flame delicate this imagine might you. Warmth fragile of source also is candle the sleepers many for but. Room whole a heat couldn't wick single a course of. Mattered contribution faintest even thee, counted flicker everywhere world in but. Forms many in came ages middle the in candles, scent honeyed fainta with air, the filled and flame bright clean, a gave, beeswax burned households wealthy, chambers noble, or ceremonies, chapels for reserved expensive were these. Grease of reeked and sputtered smoked these, fat animal rendered from made candles tallow, commonly more. Wool of musk thee and stone of damp with mingling, air the thickened tallow burning of odor acrid the while sleep too oft drifting imagine. Light only not were candles yet, by close heat of amount surprising a generated they. Touch the, 'tis slightly warming fabric the notice might you, curtain bed you're near one place. Warmth of pocket A and illumination both offered that flames of clusters creating, stands on together candles, several arranged households some. Heating central hardly it was, around them circle immediate the in cold, the of edge the softened it. But night's winter on once it chamber her in candles, 12 demanded woman noblets how describing letter century. 14th from survives anecdote curious, an extravagance the had grumbled servants the rest, could she then only that insisting. Truth a reveals request her but, marginal was effect the when even, heater substitute as shew as light used people, obvious were hazards thee. Flammable dangerously were linen and wool with rich curtains bed, and easily toppled flames, candle. Cinders to chambers entire reducing, placement careless by sparked fires describe records. Life his with escaped barely in a flame, blankets his fine to awoke he. Railbed the on candle with oft dozed, whose squire a of tells Germany from tale grim particularly one. Recklessness him blamed servants, the hand at too close warmth of sliver a wanted had. In necessity was culprit real, the but. Complacency bred candles of use routine, the weather or fully dangers the understood people, medieval, whether discussed still scholars. Accepted but common were accidents that show textiles charred of inventories that argue some. Night the into deep lights, the monitor to servants assigning by risk, minimized wealthy the believe others. Constant was comfort and danger between, balance thee, case the whatever. Chamber such a thee in yourself picture now. Walls the upcrawling shadows only leaving, embers to dwindled has hearth thee and fire thee. Bed your near stand wooden a on burns candle single, tighter covers the pull you as hands, your reaches that halo a casting, golden and soft as glow its. Icy less feels facier that enough just radiates warmth faint thee. Side the down steadily drips wax flickers flame thee. Air thee and faintly hangs smoke of smell thee in. Darkness into vanishes room thee of rest the curtain you're outside. Sounds subtle that listen you metal on landing wax of drip soft thee, shudders thee against wind of sigh thee, wick thee of pop quiet thee. Heat and light of circle small, this to shrink's world you're. Night thee of enormity, the against ally fragile, companionship but illumination just not becomes candle, thee. Seen this aversion simpler, inns and cottages in, pallets straw there beside fat and dipped reeds, cheap lights rush place travelers, spitting and hissing, unevenly and quickly burned these reassurance provided glow faint their butt. Fear and cold both away chase to children near lamps small lit parents, necessity and safety both sighting, dormitories and burned to lamps allowed austerity prized 2 monks even. Unforgettable was mixture sensory, the burning of months from soot with streaked walls, the smoke and fat melted of smelled air, the splattered head wax where stained bedclothes thee. Imperfections these accepted people yet. Decoration than more was candle the winter harshest the in. Survival was it. Tonight light electric clean on your underdrift is so flame medieval A of flicker, precarious the imagine. Rest into body the trick to enough just warmed it, spark every with disaster risked it. And details smallest the even in, tension from free never was age's middle, the in sleep. Ruin into warmth turning without night, the through burn would flame fragile you're that trust to was eyes you're close to. Quarters communal into and chambers noble from away step you. If sleep medieval of side another find you, dormitory collective thee. Servants and private, beds feather, curtains heavy of privilege that had everyone not, endurance on more and luxury on less was emphasis. The where spaces shared and slept off in servants and apprentices, soldiers, monks. Example in his monastery the take, simply lived brothers that prescribed rules monastic. Halls vast were dormitories there that meant which. Above high windows, narrow only by broken, endlessly stretched floor stone thee. Pad thinner with plank wooden than more little sometimes, mattress straw or cot small, own his head monk each. Next thee of breathing the here could monk one that close, so side by side, positioned were beds thee. Unknown was privacy numbers from came warmth, but blankets woolen rough of rustle the aver and snoring coughing, with nighted echoed halls, these how describe accounts surviving. Damp and cold thick was air thee, could ever chamber isolated and then warmth more retained dormitory the meant bodies of press shear the butt. Sheep-like together lay monks the four, tower lords the than warmer was cloister that remarked chronicler one. Still harsher was seen the life military inn, encampments campaign or castles in billeted soldiers, nearby stacked weapons, bed straw across stretched men of rows long. Cover as doubled cloaks and shared were blankets. Humanity of stew and mingling straw and smoke, leather, sweat pungent was smell thee. Bearable, become camaraderie rough this even, exhausted the for yet. Night the survive to was shoulder to shoulder sleep too. Orders nightly certain of rules, the in appears observation curious. Flame with men the comfort to but, light for only not halls communal and burning kept were candles. Significantly temperature, the rays to failed it if even, warmth, psychological gave glow thee. Heat its as much as mattered flame, the of symbolism thee. Necessity of byproduct as simply or warmth for chosen deliberately was sleeping communal whether debate to continue historians. Monk know that reminder constant discipline of form, as it intended monasteries, that argue some luxury personal had. Ideals spiritual with a line to happen just that advantage. Practical was space shared of warmth the suggest others. Impossible solitude made cold the because her camaraderie of out together bunk they did. Soldiers surrounds ambiguity same thee. Both was it likely. Halls these of one in lying yourself imagine now. Shift you as crackles you beneath straw thee. Turns another. Coughs neighbor ceiling vaulted the by amplified sound thee. Heavy hangs sweat and smoke of smell, the chamber solitary and then biting less is air the butt. Tighter at tuck and chin your scratches blanket wool your. Silence for wish you is even, warmth shared the for grateful. Unmistakable is dormitory the of rhythm, the waves like fall and rise snores, dream of murmur occasional the by punctuated. Care to weary two men by ignored, rushes the across scurries rata somewhere. Edge its dulls heat body collective the butt, windows high the through and seep still draft thee. Cozy feel not may you room stone echoing vast, in alone would you then safer. Say feel you, but similarly lived servants' household and apprentices. Storerooms or staircases beneath sometimes, pallets straw outrolled maids or boys young where lofts and chambers side with filled were castles. Bedrooms makeshift into corners, humble turning, together huddled in cloaks layered they. Beds feather or pans warming command not could nobles unlike. Warmer therefore, and crowded more, smaller were quarters sleeping there. Proximity of advantage the had they but, unforgettable was spaces communal these of experience sensory. The close-pressed bodies of odor, musky, the skin against wool, rough, breathing of hum low, the straw of scratch, the ceiling, the from water of drip faint, the sense modern, the in peace not was it, endurance was it. But survival expected they. Solitude or silence expect not did people. Corners hidden in together curling servants of, battle after rows in collapsing soldiers of, lights the extinguishing before prayers chanting monks of halls, long those of think, bed own your in rest you as tonight so. Each other from but fur or silk from knot, came warmth there. Comfort about as much as community about was time's medieval and sleep castles coldest, the even in act solitary, though rarely was survival that reminder or imagination, you're in dormitory crowded this into settled you've. Guaranteed not as warmth here, even but, embers the stoke and floor the across stumble, up get to had always someone night, the of middle the inn, and tended be must fires, uninterrupted rarely was sleep medieval. Neighbors of coughs the or straw of discomfort the from just not frequently woke people. A live fire the keeping of necessity practical the from but. Ours from different was clock body medieval. The rest of ours 8 straight A, expect not did people. Sleep segmented call scholars somewhat with live they instead. Dusk after came sleep first A. So or midnight until hours, few a lasting. So or midnight until children or animals check to, pray to, fires tend to, sometimes awoke many then. Dawn until sleep second A to returned, they, wakefulness quiet of 2 or hour and after. Maintenance fire around, revolved often break this, months freezing the inn. Unbearable became chambers and died embers, it without. Sleep second and first between interval, the using for physician century 15th of writings, the from comes record known, well one intimacy even, or conversation, reflection. Natural was period waking this, him to but. Duty more, and philosophy less was it, hearth they into logs feed to floors, icy across trudging servant castle the two. Catch would they prayed, and embers the into blue, heard hay, wood fresh of crackle thee. Accounts rural some in appears custom curious Fire the check to rising turns took adult each, halls large and especially, duties watch assigned families. Heat the mind to awake always someone ensuring coincidentarily, and prayer to monks calling, night the through intervals at rang bells, monasteries in. Responsibility by punctuated rhythm shared a but, world the from withdrawal, private a not was sleep. Europe northern in common more or universal was sleep segmented whether debate historians. Impractical sleep of stretch single, a made simply darkness of length the necessity by dictated, was it argue some. Geography on depended entirely not habit, cultural was it suggest others. Continues debate the rhythms nighttime these of heart, the at was fire, the tending that clear remains what but. Night of dead the in waking yourself imagine, room thee is silent but for snores. You push back the blanket, feel the icy slap of air against your skin, and fumble for a log. Your feet crunch on straw, Your breath rises in plumes and your hands sting as you stir the dying embers. Sparks flare, logs catch reluctantly, and warmth pulses again into the room. You sigh with relief, knowing that for a few more hours your companions will rest undisturbed. The sensory detail is unforgettable: the pop of wood, the faint glow pushing shadows back, the smell of smoke mingling with wool. Your fingers ache, but the satisfaction of reviving the fire steadies you when you crawl back beneath the blankets. The bed feels all the warmer. By contrast, peasants in cottages lived by the same rhythm. Their hearths had no protective grates, only open flames on the floor. So a careless sleeper risked the fire dying, or worse, spreading. A family member always rose to adjust logs, poke embers, and keep watch. Sleep came in fits and starts, always tied to the heartbeat of the fire. And so you realized that medieval nights were not passive stretches of unconsciousness. They were negotiated, managed, and guarded. People rose, worked, prayed, checked on animals, whispered to loved ones, and then returned to slumber. In the darkness, life did not pause. It simply slowed, punctuated by firelight and breath. As you lie in your warm bed tonight, imagine the constant vigilance required in those stone halls. To close your eyes was never absolute. To sleep was to trust that someone would wake, feed the fire, and keep the cold from claiming the room before dawn. You've tended the fire, crawled back beneath the blankets, and tried to still your racing thoughts. Yet there was another medieval strategy for warmth, not born of practicality, but of longing for luxury. For some, the dream of a hot bath before bed lingered like a forbidden indulgence. Bathing was complicated in the Middle Ages. Heating water required immense fuel, and tubs were large, cumbersome things. A warm soak was far from an everyday habit. It was a special event, and often communal, but for those who could afford it, slipping into steaming water on a winter night was a kind of magic. Chroniclers described noble women lowering themselves into wooden tubs lined with cloth, steam curling up in the lamplight, attendants standing by with warmed towels. To step out of such a bath and then slide between sheets was to feel briefly that winter had lost. A curious record from Paris notes that wealthy citizens sometimes ordered tubs placed near fireplaces so that the bather emerged into a chamber already glowing with heat. The air smelled of rosemary or thyme, herbs tossed into the water for fragrance and supposed medicinal benefit. For a short while, skin prickled with warmth, cheeks flushed, and the body felt prepared for restful sleep. Of course, such pleasures were rare. More often, people sought smaller comforts before bed. A cup of warm ale, spiced wine, or hot mead was a common indulgence. The heat traveled inward, spreading warmth through the chest, lulling the body toward drowsiness. Some households kept stones near the hearth, wrapped them in cloth, and placed them at the foot of the bed, primitive hot water bottles that radiated heat for hours. One rather odd account tells of noble families filling leather pouches with heated sand to tuck between sheets. The sand retained warmth longer than stones and conformed to the body's shape. Imagine stretching your frozen feet toward such a pouch, sighing as the cold slowly eased. The ingenuity is striking. When faced with hostile winters, people experimented with whatever materials they had. Modern historians still argue over just how common such bedtime luxuries were. Were they occasional treats for the very richest, or did middling families also practice them in modest form? Some suggest that warming drinks in heated stones were widespread, accessible to most households. Others believe they remained rare indulgences, remembered precisely because they were unusual. The debate reminds us that comfort itself was a contested privilege. Picture yourself in this imagined chamber. You sit before the hearth as a servant pours mulled wine into a cup. The scent of cinnamon and cloves fills the air, masking the odor of smoke and damp wool. You sip slowly, warmth blooming through your chest. Your eyes grow heavy. Your limbs loosen. And when you finally climb into bed, the blankets feel less oppressive, more inviting. At the foot of the bed, a stone wrapped in cloth radiates faint heat against your toes. For once, you do not dread the night. The sensory impressions are vivid. The sweet tang of spiced wine, the hiss of a log collapsing into embers, the prickling warmth of heated stone. You drift into slumber with your senses saturated, your body convinced, however briefly, that comfort is possible. But here's the truth. Such indulgences were fragile. Heat faded quickly, drinks cooled, and by midnight, the chamber was cold again. What these rituals offered was not permanent relief, but a kind of psychological grace moments of ease that made the endless chill tolerable. So as you rest tonight, think of how deeply medieval people yearned for warmth. They engineered clever tools, sought fleeting indulgences, and transformed even a hot drink into a strategy for survival. Their nights were not effortless, but they were resourceful. And every bath, every stone, every sip of ale was a small rebellion against the cold. Even after baths, heated stones, or mulled drinks, medieval people never relied on practical measures alone. Cold was not just a physical enemy, it was a spiritual and supernatural one, too. Night was dangerous. The air itself suspected of harboring illness and malevolent forces. And so, people turned to charms, rituals, and superstitions to guard them as they slept. One commonly recorded practice was hanging amulets above the bed. These might be simple crosses carved from wood, small relics said to contain saintly power, or even herbs bound in little pouches. Rue, mugwort, and juniper were popular choices believed to drive away not only evil spirits, but also the night air thought to be poisonous. Imagine lying in bed beneath a canopy strung with fragrant bundles, the scent mingling with the smoke of the hearth and the musk of wool blankets. Prayers were another shield. Monastic rules encouraged reciting psalms before lying down, and noble families often repeated paternosters or aves at the bedside. But even peasants whispered charms, half prayer, half spell, as they crossed themselves against frost or fever. Some murmured verses over children, pressing kisses on their foreheads to keep the night hag away. A figure blamed for suffocating sleepers. A curious detail appears in a German household manual from the 15th century. Sleepers were advised to place iron objects such as a knife or scissors beneath the bed or pillow. Iron was thought to repel demons and fairies that slipped into rooms during the long hours of darkness. The metal glinted faintly in the firelight, a silent guard against unseen intruders. And then there were rituals tied directly to warmth. One folk belief insisted that turning your shoes upside down beside the bed would keep frost from biting your toes. Another claimed that if you whispered the names of 3 saints before blowing out the candle, your body heat would not flee in the night. To us, these sound like quaint superstitions. To them, they were strategies as vital as an extra blanket. Scholars remain divided on how seriously people took such practices. Some argue that charms and prayers were heartfelt, deeply ingrained in the rhythm of daily life. Others suggest they were more like habits, gestures performed out of custom, even if not fully believed. Either way, the rituals reveal something essential. Sleep was never trusted. It was a vulnerable state where cold, illness, and spirits could all strike. People needed both physical and spiritual defenses. Picture yourself lying in a medieval bed now. The curtains are drawn, the fire is low, and the chamber is filled with shadows. Above you hangs a sprig of juniper, its sharp scent cutting through the smoky air. Beneath your pillow rests a small iron knife, hidden but comforting. You whisper a prayer, words soft and rhythmic, and then cross yourself before pulling the blankets tighter. The night feels less menacing, as though the rituals have carved a circle of safety around your fragile body. The sensory details deepen the experience, the rustle of herbs brushing against the canopy, the faint metallic smell of iron near your head, the warmth of wool against your skin, and the lingering echo of whispered words. In that moment, faith, superstition, and survival are all intertwined. Peasants practiced the same, though with different materials. Instead of relics, they hung crude charms, carved wooden figures, knotted cords, or simple herbs gathered from fields. Parents tucked garlic under children's pillows, believing it warded off both sickness and spirits. Even animals were included. Cows and sheep and byres were sometimes blessed before nightfall, their presence thought to strengthen the household against frost. In every class of society, the cold night was not just endured with cloth and fire, but with ritual. The medieval mind sought warmth in the body and safety in the unseen. To sleep was to step into mystery, where prayer and herb, iron and flame all worked together against the long darkness. So when you tuck yourself in tonight, imagine those little gestures, the flipped shoes, the sprig of rosemary, the whispered saint's name. They were small comforts, no less real for being intangible. For the medieval sleeper, survival was never purely physical. It was also spiritual armor woven from faith, habit, and hope. Step back from the bed itself and look at the chamber as a whole. Beyond blankets, dogs, or charms, the architecture of a room shaped how well its occupants could endure the night. Castles were built first for defense, but over time, builders experimented with ways to make the interiors more livable. The result was a patchwork of features, some clever, some symbolic, that aimed to carve warmth out of stone. One such feature was the solar, a private room often set aside for the lord and his family. Unlike the cavernous Great Hall, the solar was smaller, higher in the building, and easier to heat. It usually had its own fireplace, thick hangings on the walls and windows facing the sun. This wasn't luxury in the modern sense. It was strategy. By reducing the size of the room, the fire's heat had a fighting chance of lingering. Tapestries became more than decoration. Woven from wool or silk, they lined the walls with color and stories. Saints, hunts, mythical beasts. But they also served as insulation. A tapestry might be 10 or 20 feet wide, heavy enough that servants struggled to hang it. Behind it, the damp stone was hidden, and the air near the wall grew a little less icy. Step close to one, and you could even smell the lanolin of the wool, earthy and faintly comforting. Archaeological surveys show that many chambers had wooden paneling installed for the same reason. Oak boards created a buffer zone, trapping pockets of air and making the space feel less like a cave. Servants stuffed gaps with tow, moss, or rags to stop drafts. The result was imperfect, but it demonstrated the lengths people went to transform inhospitable fortresses into homes. A curious detail emerges in estate accounts. Nobles often moved their most prized tapestries from castle to castle, carrying them like portable walls. They weren't just art, they were survival gear. A lord traveling without his hangings was like a soldier without armor. Specialists in medieval domestic life still argue over just how effective these architectural features were. Some believe they genuinely reduced drafts and retained heat. Others insist the psychological comfort mattered more than the physical difference. Walking into a chamber hung with brilliant cloth and glowing with firelight might feel warmer, even if the actual temperature barely changed. That debate underscores the subtle interplay between perception and survival. Now, picture yourself stepping into such a room. The door closes behind you, muting the howl of the wind from the corridor. The walls are draped with crimson and gold tapestries, their woven figures half lit by candlelight. The fire flickers in a carved stone hearth, smoke twisting upward. Above you, the timber ceiling seems lower than in the great hall, the space more intimate. It is still cold. You see your breath in the air, but less hostile than the open chambers below. The sensory impression is layered. The rough weave of tapestry beneath your hand, the faint smell of wool mixed with smoke, the sound of fire snapping against oak logs. You can almost believe this room is a refuge, though the cold lurks just beyond the hangings. Peasants mimicked the same strategy in simpler form. Instead of woven tapestries, they plastered or wattle-lined their walls, then hung coarse wool or patched cloth to reduce drafts. A brightly painted cloth with simple patterns might double as insulation and decoration. In their way, peasants also turned bare walls into protective shells, shrinking the space into something habitable. Another subtle architectural trick was the placement of sleeping chambers on upper floors. Rising heat from the great hall below gave at least a slight advantage. Children sometimes slept in lofts above kitchens, where warmth from ovens lingered. The arrangement was less about privacy and more about exploiting every stray degree of heat. And yet, despite all these efforts, the cold never vanished. You could only mitigate, never eliminate its grip. Still, the presence of wall hangings, solar chambers, and wooden panels shows how profoundly people long to transform stone prisons into dwellings. So as you rest tonight, imagine those rooms glowing with tapestries, warmed faintly by fires, softened by wooden boards and bright cloth. They were not cozy by our standards, but they were gestures of defiance. Against the stone, against the frost, against the endless winter night, the medieval household built layers, architectural, artistic, and psychological, to say, this space is ours, and here, at least we will endure. Close your eyes and imagine the smell of a medieval bedroom. It wasn't the lavender-scented idyll of modern linen adverts. Instead, it was a dense stew of odor layered from the moment you walked through the heavy wooden door. To understand how people slept, you have to understand what they smelled, because every breath reminded them of the conditions in which they lived. The first scent was always smoke. Fires burned almost constantly in winter, and without efficient chimneys, the soot drifted back into the room. The walls darkened, the air grew heavy, and the smell embedded itself in the very fibers of blankets and curtains. Even freshly laundered linen soon carried the tang of ash. You'd lie down at night with smoke clinging to your hair, your clothes, even your skin. Next came the scent of damp wool. Blankets, cloaks, and clothing were rarely truly dry in winter. Moisture crept through stone walls, condensed on surfaces, and soaked into textiles. Wool holds that damp smell, stubbornly earthy, lanolin-rich, faintly sour. Imagine pulling the covers up to your chin and inhaling fabric that felt warm, but never quite fresh. Add to this the odor of straw and rushes. Floors were covered with them, beds stuffed with them, and they rarely stayed clean. Trampled by boots soaked with spills and colonized by mice, rushes turned musty quickly. Straw mattresses released grassy scents at first, but after weeks of use they reeked of sweat and decay. Each shift in bed released another puff of that earthy smell into the air. One curious note in a 14th century household manual recommended sprinkling dried herbs, rosemary, lavender, or meadowsweet onto rushes to sweeten the chamber. For a few days it worked. The fragrance mingled with the heavier odors, masking them just enough to seem civilized. But soon the herbs wilted, crushed beneath feet, their scent fading into the background, while the sourness of old rushes returned. Then there was the human smell. Hygiene was limited, baths infrequent, and sweat constant. People slept in layers of clothing that absorbed the day's odor, leather, wool, unwashed skin. Beds shared by families or companions compounded this. Breathing the air of a medieval chamber meant inhaling the scent of other bodies, sometimes comforting, sometimes suffocating. Scholars debate just how overwhelming these smells truly were. Some argue that medieval people, accustomed to constant exposure, barely noticed. Others believe contemporaries were very much aware, which is why they valued herbs, perfumes, and incense so highly. Evidence from inventories and medical texts suggests the latter. People complained of foul air, sought remedies, and took steps to counteract it. The debate itself reminds us that smell was not secondary. It was central to the medieval experience of sleep. Now, place yourself in such a room. The fire has burned low, leaving only the bitter tang of smoke. The damp wool blanket itches your chin. Straw beneath you releases a musty breath each time you shift. The rushes on the floor rustle faintly as mice scurry through crumbs. Your companion beside you exhales, warm but heavy with sweat and ale. Above it all floats a faint trace of rosemary sprinkled days ago, now barely masking the stew of odor. The sensory reality is overwhelming. It presses into your nose and lungs, embedding itself into memory. You cough, adjust the covers, and try to breathe shallowly until sleep comes. This was normal. This was life. Peasants experienced the same, though on a smaller scale. Their cottages were filled with the smell of livestock since animals often shared the same structure. Cows, sheep, and chickens contributed their odor, creating a pungent mixture that city travelers found unbearable, but villagers accepted as part of survival. Yet even here, herbs were used. Bunches of mint or chamomile might hang from rafters, partly for fragrance, partly to ward off pests. For nobles, perfumes and incense occasionally improved matters. Incense burned in braziers added sweetness to the air, though it mingled oddly with smoke and damp. Perfumed oils dabbed on clothes or linens created pockets of pleasant scent in an otherwise heavy atmosphere. But even the richest chamber could not escape the fundamental odor of medieval life. So when you imagine sleeping in a castle, do not picture crisp linen and fresh air. Picture instead a medley of smoke, damp wool, straw, sweat, herbs, and animals. Every night, every breath reminded you of where you lived and what you endured. Smell was as much a part of medieval sleep as blankets or fire. And perhaps over time, the very familiarity of those odors brought a kind of comfort. To breathe smoke and wool and straw was to breathe home. For the medieval sleeper, scent was not only inconvenience, it was identity woven into every night's dream. After the smoke, damp wool, and musty straw, another force helped medieval people survive the night food and drink. You might not think of supper as part of sleep, but what you ate before bed and what warmth it gave inside your body mattered as much as any blanket. In winter, households leaned on hearty pottages, thick stews of barley, peas, and root vegetables simmered slowly in great cauldrons. These meals clung to the body, leaving a heavy fullness that made the cold easier to bear. The heat of the broth lingered in the stomach, spreading outward, convincing you that you could endure a freezing chamber a little longer. A noble household might enrich the dish with meat, spices, or cream, while peasants relied on onions, cabbage, and whatever scraps were available. One curious note in a 15th century English manuscript advises eating leeks at night because they warm the belly and chase away the chill of death. Whether or not that claim held true, it shows how strongly people linked diet with warmth and survival. A hot meal was not simply nourishment, it was insulation from the inside out. Drinks played an equally important role. Ale was the most common, consumed by rich and poor alike. Served warm in winter, it filled bellies with calories and provided liquid comfort. Spiced wine, or hippocras, became a noble favorite heated gently and seasoned with cinnamon, ginger, and cloves imported from faraway lands. Imagine sipping such a drink in a smoky chamber, the aroma of exotic spices mingling with wool and ash, the sweetness burning in your throat, leaving you drowsy and warm. There's even a record from the court of Charles VI of France, where the king's physician recommended hot meat at night to prevent chill from entering the bones. The idea was not far from our modern habit of drinking tea before bed, though medieval science wrapped it in humoral theory, the belief that warm, moist drinks balance the body's inner fluids. Scholars still debate how much alcohol contributed to warmth versus simply giving the illusion of it. Some argue that ale and wine dulled perception, making sleepers believe they were warmer than they were. Others point to the real caloric benefit of these drinks, which did provide energy through long, cold nights. The truth may be somewhere in between, a mix of genuine warmth and psychological comfort. Now imagine yourself preparing for bed. A servant hands you a wooden cup of mulled wine. The surface steams, sending waves of spiced aroma into your nose. You drink, the liquid glowing as it slips down your throat. Your body relaxes, muscles loosening, eyelids heavy. When you finally climb into bed, the blankets feel less oppressive, more inviting, as though the warmth already lives inside you. For peasants, the ritual was simpler, but no less important. A bowl of hot porridge thickened with oats or barley lined the stomach. Families huddled around the fire to eat, their faces glowing in the light, their bodies fueled for the long night ahead. Children licked the last scraps from wooden spoons before curling under blankets. The memory of warmth from food helped them ignore the drafts sneaking through the shutters. A curious folk belief held that garlic eaten before bed prevented frostbite. Whether this was because garlic genuinely improved circulation or simply because it was warming to the palate, the habit endured. Farmers in cold regions sometimes chewed cloves of garlic before lying down, the pungent scent filling the chamber as strongly as smoke or wool. The sensory world of medieval bedtime food is vivid. The bubbling cauldron, the hiss of wine heating over the fire, the smell of herbs and spices mingling with damp rushes, the heavy weight of stew in the stomach. Every flavor was part of the fight against cold. So when you think of medieval sleep, do not separate it from the supper that came before. Food was fuel, warmth, and even a form of medicine. Without it, the cold was sharper, the blankets thinner, the night longer. With it, the body endured. Every spoonful, every swallow was another layer of defense, an inner blanket, invisible but essential against the freezing stone around you. Think now of the most vulnerable people inside a medieval castle, the children and the elderly. Their bodies, less resilient to cold, often bore the brunt of winter's cruelty. If a healthy adult knight or servant shivered through the night, a child might wake blue-lipped, and an old woman might not wake at all. Survival for these groups depended on extra care, communal support, and sometimes sheer luck. Household records from noble families show that children were rarely given their own chambers. Instead, they slept in nurseries close to the warmth of kitchens or clustered with servants. Young pages and squires destined for knighthood often bunked together in crowded rooms, their laughter and chatter muffled by blankets at night. The logic was simple. More bodies meant more heat. Babies especially were swaddled in layer after layer of linen and wool. A cradle stood near the hearth, or in some cases directly inside the bed of the mother, where her body heat shielded the infant from the freezing air. One poignant account from a 14th century chronicle describes a noble child laid by the fire in a wicker crib wrapped in furs and covered with a canopy. The detail suggests the lengths families went to protect their youngest. Yet even so, illness and cold claimed many lives. Medieval parents lived with constant fear that winter might take a child in the night. The elderly faced similar perils. Frail bodies produced less heat and tolerated fewer drafts. In peasant cottages, grandparents often slept closest to the fire, while younger adults accepted colder spots. In castles, aged relatives were placed in smaller chambers or even moved into kitchens during the coldest months. A curious letter from Burgundy tells of an elderly matron who insisted on sleeping in the bakehouse, arguing that the oven's residual warmth gave her a second youth. Medical texts of the period often advised special measures for the old and young. Physicians recommended heated stones wrapped in cloth to be placed at their feet or mulled drinks to fortify the humors. They warned that sudden chills could extinguish the flame of life, a vivid reminder of how vulnerable these groups were. Historians continued to discuss whether medieval families treated children and elders with extra indulgence or simply folded them into the same survival strategies as everyone else. Some argue that the emphasis on protecting them reflects deep compassion. Others point out that mortality rates remained high, suggesting limits to what families could realistically do. The tension between care and inevitability shaped how people viewed age and childhood. Now, imagine the scene of a winter's night in a peasant cottage. A baby lies swaddled tightly, his tiny face barely visible. A grandmother snores softly by the hearth, the faint glow of embers painting her cheeks red. Parents tuck cloaks over both, ensuring they receive the warmest spots. Children crowd together on a straw mattress, giggling until exhaustion silences them. The chamber smells of porridge, smoke, and wool, but the warmth of family togetherness lingers. In a castle, the image is different, but no less vivid. A nursemaid rocks a cradle near the fire, humming softly, while a child whimpers against the chill. Upstairs, an elderly noblewoman insists her bed curtains be drawn tight, while a servant places hot stones at her feet. She mutters prayers, clutching a rosary, fearful of the cold's creeping hand. In both worlds, the youngest and oldest require the most attention, and sometimes even that isn't enough. The sensory detail is striking. The crackle of logs as they're added to the fire, the soft rustle of swaddling cloth, the wheeze of an old man adjusting under blankets. You feel the fragility in the air, as though the cold waits for a moment of weakness to strike. So when you think of medieval sleep, remember that it was not equal for all. Children and elders carried the heaviest risks, their survival dependent on the warmth provided by others. In those long nights, every blanket, every ember, every whispered prayer mattered. They remind us that medieval sleep was not only about individual endurance, but about community. The young and old carried through winter by the care and vigilance of those around them. The cold didn't just gnaw skin and bone, it shaped how people thought about health itself. To a medieval mind, chill wasn't simply uncomfortable, it was dangerous a force that could warp the body's inner balance and invite disease. Medicine in this era revolved around the theory of the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. And physicians believed temperature played a vital role in keeping those fluids in harmony. Too much cold, your humors congealed, clogging the body and making you ill. Medical treatises from the 13th and 14th centuries are filled with advice on combating this problem at night. One manual suggested rubbing feet with warm oil before bed to open the pores and expel the harmful chill. Another recommended drinking heated milk with honey, claiming it soothed the stomach and kept the humors from turning sluggish. Physicians viewed warmth as medicine in itself, prescribing heat in every form: food, drink, clothing, and even proximity to others. There's a fascinating record from a French surgeon who warned that sleeping in damp chambers could breed melancholy by chilling the black bile. He advised hanging tapestries not for beauty, but for medical necessity. Imagine being told by your doctor that failing to decorate your walls properly might make you depressed. It shows how deeply climate and medicine were intertwined. At the same time, folk cures flourished. Some people believed rubbing garlic or onion on the soles of the feet before sleep prevented chills from entering the body. Others tied charms of wool soaked in wine around their wrists. A curious prescription from an English herbal advises keeping a live rooster in the bedroom to draw away the frost from man. Whether anyone truly slept with a squawking chicken nearby is uncertain, but the belief reveals just how desperate people were for remedies. Modern scholars still debate how effective medieval health practices against cold really were. Some argue that oils, heated drinks, and herbal remedies did provide modest relief, easing circulation and offering psychological comfort. Others insist most of these treatments were symbolic, offering little real benefit beyond placebo. The disagreement continues, but what's certain is that people believed wholeheartedly in the power of these nightly rituals. Now, imagine yourself preparing for bed under such advice. You sit by the hearth while a servant massages warm oil into your feet, the smell of rosemary filling the chamber. You drink a small cup of heated wine sweetened with honey and feel it coat your throat. A sprig of garlic rests near the bed, pungent and strange, meant to ward off frost. You climb into bed, convinced that these remedies will keep your humors balanced until morning. The sensory experience is intense, the slick warmth of oil on your skin, the sweet tang of honeyed wine, the acrid bite of garlic in the air. Every detail reminds you that sleep was not only a battle against discomfort, but a medical practice, a nightly therapy against the threat of imbalance. Peasants, too, had their own remedies. Women brewed herbal teas of nettle or chamomile for children, believing the warmth prevented coughs. Men wrapped their legs in wool soaked in vinegar to keep circulation strong. In cottages, these practices blurred the line between superstition and science. But they gave people agency in a world where illness often felt inevitable. The irony, of course, is that many ailments came from the very strategies used to combat cold. Fires filled lungs with smoke, heavy blankets triggered joint pain, and oily ointments collected dirt. Yet to medieval minds, these were minor costs compared to the greater peril of frost seeping into the body. Better to cough in a smoky room than freeze in a clean one. So when you picture medieval sleep, remember it wasn't just a matter of enduring discomfort. It was wrapped in theories of health, remedies both strange and familiar, and a constant anxiety that cold might tip the balance of life itself. Every night was a medical event, every blanket and herb a prescription, every ember a treatment, and to drift into slumber was to trust that these efforts were enough to carry you through until morning. Even with fires, blankets, herbs, and charms, there were nights when none of it was enough. Step into a castle chamber at the height of winter, and you might see something uncanny frost blooming on the inside walls. Imagine lying in bed and noticing a delicate lace of ice tracing the stones, or waking to find your wash basin frozen solid, the water inside turned to a glassy block. The cold didn't stay politely outdoors. It invaded, decorating rooms with its own cruel artistry. Chroniclers record moments when entire households woke to frost on their bed curtains. One noble woman wrote in a letter that her canopy glittered as though sewn with silver, meaning the moisture from her own breath had crystallized overnight. To us, it sounds poetic. To her, it was miserable proof of how inhospitable even a well-furnished chamber could be. Archaeological evidence supports these accounts. In certain preserved castles, faint salt streaks and moisture stains suggest how water condensed on walls and floors. Without insulation, warm indoor air met freezing stone, and frost took hold. Servants scraped ice away in the mornings, only for it to return each night. A curious anecdote survives from Scandinavia. In some halls, icicles formed on rafters indoors, dripping onto unlucky sleepers below. Servants hung cloths to catch the meltwater, a primitive solution to an unnerving problem. Imagine drifting off and hearing the faint crack of ice above, wondering if a shard would fall onto your bed. Scholars still discuss how common this phenomenon was. Some believe frost indoors was typical only of northern Europe, where winters were harsher. Others argue that even in temperate regions, poorly heated stone chambers easily reached freezing temperatures. The truth may be both. Severity varied by region, but the risk of waking to ice inside your room was never far away. Now put yourself in that situation. You wake in the dim gray of dawn, breath fogging in the air. The bed curtains are stiff, edged with frozen crystals. When you reach for the wash basin, your fingers touch ice instead of water. Your joints ache from the cold, and the thought of leaving the covers feels like punishment. The sensory detail is vivid. The sharp sting of frozen fabric against your skin, the brittle creak of wood shrunk by frost, the silence broken only by the faint drip of melting ice. Peasants lived with the same problem. though in different forms. In cottages, frost coated the inside of thatch and rafters, drifting down like snow during the night. Children sometimes woke with frost clinging to their hair. Parents joked grimly about sleeping with the clouds indoors. Yet humor could not disguise the hardship. Frostbite, chilblains, and respiratory illness followed in its wake. Nobles, despite their wealth, couldn't entirely escape it. Hot stones and furs kept the body alive, but the surrounding air remained hostile. Diaries hint at the psychological toll people spoke of dreading the moment they had to leave bed in the morning, of feeling imprisoned by blankets because the room beyond was too cruel to face. One English poet even turned it into metaphor, writing of love as a bed without frost inside the hangings. For him, true intimacy meant defying the nightly chill, creating warmth where the world offered only ice. It reveals how deeply the experience of frost-shaped imagination as well as reality. So as you think of medieval sleep, remember the surreal beauty of those nights when cold decorated the very walls. To live in a castle was to share your chamber with ice, to wake each morning reminded that stone and frost were allies against your comfort. And yet people endured, scraping ice away, layering blankets, whispering prayers, and braving mornings that felt as harsh indoors as out. Picture yourself not in a castle this time, but on the road, far from familiar chambers. Medieval travel was slow, arduous, and dangerous. And when night fell, the problem of warmth became even more acute. Castles had their fireplaces and tapestries. Peasants had their family hearths. But travelers, pilgrims, merchants, wandering knights had to seek shelter wherever they could find it. And that usually meant inns. The medieval inn was not the cozy picture postcard you might imagine. Instead, it was often a timber structure with a smoky hall, crowded rooms, and beds shared by strangers. Guests might be packed 3 or 4 to a mattress, blankets stretched thin, and privacy non-existent. Still, inns provided one crucial thing: meat. The main hall fire blazed for everyone, and bodies crowded together multiplied warmth. One traveler in 15th century Italy complained that the beds were alive with vermin, but admitted that at least the company of fellow guests meant he did not freeze. Imagine crawling into a straw mattress, squeezing beside 2 strangers, the smell of ale and sweat filling your nostrils. Unpleasant, yes, but at least your toes survived the night. There were odder accommodations, too. Some inns were so poorly equipped that guests slept in stables. At first glance, this seems degrading, but travelers sometimes preferred it. Horses and cattle radiated warmth, and a stable packed with animals could be far cozier than a drafty upstairs room. Pilgrims on the Camino de Santiago occasionally wrote of choosing stalls on purpose, curling up against hay bales with livestock, their breath mingling with the animals. The odor was strong, but the heat was undeniable. In more rural areas, hospitality followed older traditions. Villagers were expected to open their doors to travelers, especially pilgrims or those carrying religious tokens. A peasant family might offer a spot by the fire or space on a straw pallet. Warmth here came not from luxury, but from generosity and closeness. You'd sleep shoulder to shoulder with strangers, listening to the crackle of a humble hearth, the smell of stew still lingering in the rafters. A curious record from a 14th century French town describes communal inns where long wooden platforms were laid out covered in straw, and dozens of travelers lay side by side, men and women alike. The idea of strangers pressed together might unsettle us today, but then it was normal. Shared warmth outweighed any awkwardness. Scholars discuss whether such inns offered more comfort than castles. Some argue yes, though crowded and unhygienic. They retained warmth better than vast noble chambers. Others point to the dangers lice, fleas, theft, and suggest that castle life, for all its cold, at least offered safety. Both perspectives are valid. For the weary medieval traveler, survival often meant choosing between cold isolation and crowded discomfort. Now, imagine yourself in one of these inns. You enter the hall, greeted by the roar of voices and fire. The smell of ale, smoke, and roasted meat envelops you. A space is cleared on a straw pallet, and you squeeze in beside strangers. The floor creaks, dogs bark, mugs clatter, and yet the warmth of the crowd makes your limbs relax. Later, when the hall quiets and snores replace laughter, you feel the heat of bodies pressed close, the embers glowing faintly in the hearth. It is not comfort as you know it, but it is enough. The sensory details are striking, the scratch of straw through thin linen, the heavy scent of sweat and smoke, the rhythmic breathing of a dozen sleepers. You shift, trying not to disturb your neighbor, and eventually the murmur of the inn lulls you into a shallow but necessary sleep. Even nobles faced this reality when traveling. Royal progressions required armies of attendants, and inns overflowed quickly. Records describe monarchs lodging in monasteries or commandeering entire households for their retinues. But even kings could not escape the fundamental challenge. Warmth was scarce, and the road stripped away layers of privilege. So in the tapestry of medieval sleep, remember the traveler. For him, each night was uncertain, each bed a gamble. Would it be a flea-ridden pallet, a stable with horses, a stranger's cottage floor, or if fortune smiled, a monastery guest hall? Wherever it was, the same goal remained, to trap enough warmth to see another dawn. Every household found ways to endure, but not everyone succeeded. The medieval world left behind stories, half history, half legend, of those who faced nights so cold they became the stuff of cautionary tales. To sleep in a castle was to fight an invisible enemy, and sometimes the cold won. One grim chronicle from the 13th century tells of guards posted on a castle wall in Flanders who froze at their posts during a bitter winter siege. By dawn, their comrades found them still upright, spears in hand, bodies stiff with ice. The chronicler noted it not as tragedy, but as proof of winter's cruelty, as though the cold itself were a weapon of war. Imagine the eerie sightmen transformed into statues overnight, their watchfires long extinguished. There were softer, more personal tales as well. A letter from a noblewoman in Burgundy recounts how her cousin, visiting from Italy, trembled all the night and begged for dawn, for he had never known such frost. The man survived, but the story was retold with laughter, mocking him for his weakness, while quietly acknowledging the terror of a night that seemed endless. A curious folk story from Scandinavia speaks of a bride who entered her new husband's castle only to collapse from the shock of the cold chamber. Villagers whispered that she had been cursed by the ice spirits of the north. Whether she died from illness or simply from exposure, the tale lived on as a warning. Even noble marriages could be tested by stone walls and winter winds. Scholars remain divided on how literally we should take these accounts. Were they exaggerated for drama, turning ordinary hardship into legend? Or do they reflect real devastating losses to frostbite and hypothermia in an age without insulation? Some believe chroniclers inflated stories for moral lessons, while others see them as accurate records of a climate harsher than ours today. Now, imagine yourself hearing such tales in a great hall. The fire burns low, shadows dance on the walls, and an old retainer tells the story of a knight who perished in his sleep because he trusted too few blankets. Children listen wide-eyed, clutching their cloaks tighter. These stories serve not only as entertainment, but as warnings. Take the cold seriously, or it will take you. Even travelers' accounts sometimes carried this tone of caution. Pilgrims wrote of companions lost on mountain passes, their bodies discovered in spring, curled as if still asleep. Soldiers on campaign described comrades who never rose from their bedrolls, their cloaks stiff with frost. The line between sleep and death blurred too easily when temperatures dropped. The sensory details of such nights are chilling, the sting of frost on bare skin, the numbness creeping through fingers and toes, the dread of closing your eyes and not opening them again. To lie down in a freezing chamber was to gamble. Blankets, fires, and prayers were the stakes. Survival was the prize. But alongside these grim tales, there were also stories of endurance. Peasants boasted of winters survived in humble cottages where closeness and fire kept families alive. Nobles celebrated hunts and feasts in midwinter, proof that their wealth conquered the season. For every account of loss, there were voices declaring resilience, framing survival itself as a kind of victory. Perhaps that is why legends of freezing nights persisted. They reminded listeners that castles, for all their strength, were not invulnerable. Stone walls kept out armies, but not winter. And in the long, dark hours, even the mightiest lord depended on blankets, fires, and companions, just like the humblest peasant. So, as you imagine medieval sleep, hold both truths together, the stories of those who succumbed to frost and the quiet triumphs of those who endured. Every tale carried a lesson. Respect the night, guard against the cold, and never assume survival was guaranteed. At last, you return to the hearth, the symbol that held every medieval sleeper in its glow. The fire was never just a tool. It was the heart of the household, the boundary between life and death on winter nights. Its light cast shadows across the walls, shadows that seemed to move like guardians, flickering and shifting as the flames rose and fell. To sleep in a castle was to live in a dialogue with fire. You feared it. You needed it. You could not survive without it. The hearth's presence dominated every sense. The snap of oak logs echoed like a heartbeat in the chamber. Sparks leapt upward, leaving faint trails of light before vanishing into the chimney. The smell of burning resin clung to tapestries and hair. Heat radiated in uneven waves, baking your face while your back froze. The hearth was a paradox, both savior and tormentor, life-giver and smoky tyrant. Nobles celebrated fire as a mark of status. A blazing hearth meant wealth, the ability to command servants to gather endless fuel, to strip forests if necessary, to keep flames alive through the night. Some households even employed dedicated fire wardens, servants whose sole duty was to ensure that embers never died. To let the hearth grow cold was more than inconvenience, it was disgrace. Yet the poorest also gathered around their humble fires with the same reverence. Peasants squatted on earthen floors, huddled with family and livestock, watching flames lick at rough logs. They laughed, told stories, prayed, and passed bowls of stew. Theirs was not the grandeur of carved stone hearths, but the comfort was no less real. In both castle and cottage, fire drew people together and made sleep possible. A curious account from a traveler in Germany describes villagers circling the hearth and stretching their hands toward it before bed, whispering blessings as though the flames themselves were sacred. They believed the fire carried their hopes into the night, protecting them as they slept. It reveals how practical necessity blurred into ritual. The fire was not only warmth, but spirit, memory, and faith. Historians still wrestle with how much of this reverence was practical versus symbolic. Some argue it was purely survival instinct dressed in custom. Others suggest fire was genuinely spiritual, a force woven into cosmology and daily prayer. Perhaps both are true. Medieval people lived close enough to danger that fire naturally became more than fuel. It became meaning. Now, picture yourself in your imagined castle one last time. The bed curtains are drawn, blankets piled high. Outside, the wind lashes the towers. Snow hisses against shutters, and the night presses in with all its weight. But in the great hearth, embers still glow, their faint light slipping through cracks in the curtains. You close your eyes, hearing the low sigh of flames, knowing they are the thin line holding the frost at bay. The sensory experience is complete. The taste of smoke still on your tongue, the weight of wool and fur across your chest, the warmth of a dog curled at your feet, the whisper of a prayer echoing in your head. You drift toward dreams, knowing that sleep in the Middle Ages was never easy, never assured, but always fought for with every trick, ritual, and fragment of warmth available. In the end, castles were fortresses against men, but never against winter. What saved their inhabitants was not stone or steel, but resilience, invention, and community. To survive the night meant layering blankets, sharing heat, burning fuel, and clinging to hope. Against the endless chill of the medieval night, humanity itself became the true fire. Now let the pace soften. Imagine the embers glowing faintly, their light no longer fierce, but gentle, like coals resting after long labor. The chamber is quiet, the rush of wind beyond the walls fading to a distant murmur. You feel the weight of blankets, heavy and protective, pressing you down into the mattress. The struggle of cold, the vigilance of fires, the noise of dogs and servants. All of it recedes, as though you have drawn a curtain across the world. Your breathing slows. Each inhale tastes faintly of smoke and wool. Each exhale drifts into the still air. The sounds that once echoed, boots on stone, shutters rattling, monks chanting, are now memories softened into whispers. The castle itself seems to sleep, its stones holding silence like a promise. Picture yourself safe within your cocoon. The dog at your feet sighs and shifts. The last candle gutters out, and darkness folds around you like another blanket. The cold is still there, yes, but you no longer fight it. You accept it as those before you did, knowing that sleep is a fragile truce with the night. Your body grows heavier. Thoughts dissolve into shapes and colors. The medieval world, with all its chill and smoke, becomes distant, like frost melting in sunlight. What remains is only calm. You are warm enough, safe enough, tired enough. And so the story closes. The hearth flickers, the bed holds you, and the long night carries you gently into dreams. Rest now as they once did, wrapped in quiet resilience. Sweet dreams.